and going out and doing the work and researching things. So I liked what Chris said, but let me go take the extra step and ask the additional two questions or one question after that and see where it takes me. So people today are getting it just like you've gotten it. It's taking you down into a new rabbit hole, so to speak. And what you're doing, I commend you because you're helping other people who have questions, who were afraid to come out and speak their truth. But we all are connected. And right now, as I said, there's no better time to be on the planet than right now because we are, as I say, nearing the age of Aquarius. And my research.
We stand on the precipice of something great if we can only just grasp it.
Well, we can. I take the word if out of the equation because if means it's not going to happen. We will. Some will get it, some won't. So what next? But for the most part, we just need to reach a critical mass. And the critical mass is going to be reached. And that's kind of one of the reasons why you see some of the things that are happening to people to keep them in fear, to put the bug in their ear, because they know that if enough people get it, it's like, and I'll leave you with this before I'll get back to you, is when you watch The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy finds the wizard behind the curtain and she opens the curtain, and there he is, he's exposed for what he really is. So right now, the curtain is coming down all over the world, and people now are going within for the answers and realizing that you have to be heart smart. You got to go into your heart and realize because you already have the answer. You came here knowing, but you came here and you had to forget what you knew. It was like sort of a game, so to speak. You had to go through this wonderful place of 3D experiences in order to ascend to that next level. So we are close to our own ascension, and we all have to do the work and not be judgmental as to what we see out there every day. And I finally got it where I had to be outside of the box to be a conscious observer of it and not to be judgmental of it, but just to give people a snapshot of what's really going on because I see things almost through kaleidoscope. And as you said, I go through a number of different topics to show people there are a lot of different ways to look at something for those of us who don't have the 9 to 5, who aren't chasing the carrot, who aren't money driven, or ego driven, and who are thinkers such as you and myself. So I commend you again, as I said, for what you're doing. So what are you doing right now, Chris? What is your next challenge?
Well, I just have a few more things to touch on before we get there. What I want to go back to is that energy scale and remind the viewers, because I know that sometimes our attention span goes a little bit off, is that we have this energy scale, and what we have is we have the idea of dark and entrapped and devil being the extreme end of the energy scale, the lower frequency, and the highest of high frequencies being God or light or pure peace. Okay? And frequency, when I say frequency is what determines what you are. Okay? You could become a rock, just like the Buddhists talk about, and you would be entrapped, and you wouldn't have anywhere to go, and you would be that energy within that rock. And then you could be as free as a bird, or as free as beyond the bird, not even having a body at all and living in utter pure peace like I experienced when I went to see Adam. And so what I got to with this is we have to have now a different definition of maker and God, okay? The maker, the creator of humans, is not God at all.
Well,
not God. To say not God at all is wrong, because they do have energy and they do have both ends of the scale, but they are even at a lower frequency than we are. They have an agenda just to use humanity, and I will be getting to that. But God, the idea of good, can never be bad. It's not on that end of the scale, it's on the other end of the scale. So the illusion here on the planet is that our maker is God, that we're alone in the universe, and that we must fear God, or God is going to come down and venge wrath on us. Now, there very well could be a maker, and that maker as he sees fit, can come down and wipe out humanity, just like we're in a fishbowl, drop enough nuclear weapons to wipe the planet out, wait until it chills out, and then reseed it with more humans. And what you need to get to with that is, why were humans created in the first place? And that's where I'm kind of going next.
It was interesting your take on it. I've done a lot of research on it, and so I'm quite interested to hear your take on it. You tell me the origin of man on Earth. What say you?
Well, what I wondered for the longest time is, what makes gold the top-notch, top-of-the-line, most sought-after thing in our world? And I couldn't figure that out, and couldn't figure that out, and couldn't figure that out. And it really troubled me, and it bothered me. Why not have free energy? Why is free energy and all of these technologies being suppressed? What would be so important to our government, the government behind our government? Oh, and when I mention that, I really do need to throw that out so people understand that. For people that don't understand, we do have a government behind our government. It's called Empire of the City. It is a country to itself. It's comprised of 3 city-states. The 3 city-states are London City within London, England. In other words, a city within a city. And that city is one of the 3 cities in this government. What is on those lands is the homes of the super elite, uber rich of our world, and the locations of the Fed banks, headquarters of all the main banks in the world that control the wealth in the world, and where they hold a lot of meetings. There is a second city, and that is the Vatican City in Rome, Italy. Hopefully I have that right. I always get that one confused, but Vatican City, and that's what's important. And so Vatican City is where the Pope is, but more important, they have the vast resources and wealth of the world. And they've been accused of doing money laundering. They've been accused of, because they're pharmaceutical companies, of using the orphans that they have, especially in Canada, and using these indigenous orphans as trial guinea pigs for their pharmaceuticals, and also using these orphans to supply the sex trade around the world of children. I said they've been accused. That doesn't mean that there's necessarily proof of it, but there was a gentleman who was going to actually bring a trial against the Queen and previous King of England, and what he had stated was that they had showed up to his orphanage, and they took half a dozen children, and they took them for a picnic in an area on the orphanage, and then they showed back up, and these children never showed back up, and one of them was his friend, and he was going to testify that he was an indigenous gentleman, and that he contacted some kind of disease right beforehand, was put into a hospital where he died within 2 weeks. And this happens to a lot whenever somebody really has some evidence and speaks out against these people. This is what happens to them, okay? And then the third city, people would be shocked to know, and the biggest and the most important to their cause, is the District of Columbia here within the United States. And what we represent is the bank vault for all the gold storage in the world, and the military to back up or protect that, and to protect their interests, their global interests around the world, of oil, of mining, of the destruction of the planet. And that's where I got into, is why is gold so important? And I found that in the Sumerian tablets, which I am currently studying. So up to the point which I'm part of the way in the 3rd tablet, I've already gotten answers to that, of where humans came from, and a glimpse into what that is. And what the Sumerian tablets are is the oldest known religious type text on the planet. And what it talks about is that there was a planet, and this planet, again, going back to when I ran into Planet X, Nibiru, and all that this planet is a planet that, unlike ours here in the inner solar system, is a planet that has a long elliptical orbit like a comet. And at one point, it's way out, deep out into space, and it gets very cold, and volcanic activity slows down on its surface. And then it travels all the way back in over a couple thousand years, and it gets very close to the sun, and at that time, it superheats that planet, and pieces of it break off, causing meteors to strike the surface of the inner planets, sometimes wiping them out and putting them into ice ages. And so immediately, every 10,000 years, if the Earth is on the right side of the sun at that time, it very well could explain why we have all, these ice ages every 10,000 or so years, depending on the Earth's position at the time that this thing comes through. So this planet coming in gets superheated, and it also causes the sun to react with solar flares, thus heating up all the planets. And our planet right now is going through one of these superheating moments on Earth. And the government is trying to tell you it's all because of environmental reasons or whatever. But what I'm getting to in that is, if planets are all hollow, which I believe 100%, you guys will have to look into that, then beings are inside of planets. And when planets get too close to a sun, or the sun starts to expand too close to the planets, they need to protect that somehow. Now, nature has a way of protecting that, and that is volcanic activity on the surface throwing ash into the atmosphere. The ash diffuses into the atmosphere, and as the sun particles try to hit into that planet, they're bounced out, and gamma rays and things like that are absorbed into the ash, and then it falls back to the ground. Well, what it describes in the Sumerian text is that the volcanic activity had slowed down on their planet, and so that they had to turn to some other ideas. And it took them a few generations to even try it. They were in big denial about this, but they finally tried two different solutions. One of them was to launch nuclear or it says weapons of mass destruction, okay, in the tablets, big weapons. And they launched those into volcanoes, trying to kick the volcanoes off, and to make them have extra activity, enough to put enough ash into the atmosphere. Well, they launched all these weapons, and it described that the valleys shook, which I believe are the valleys inside of the Earth, at the tremendous force of these weapons, but it failed. Nothing happened. So then their other idea was to go to the asteroid belt, which is rich in iron and gold, and that asteroid belt is where there used to be a planet in between Mars and Saturn, and it was exploded. Something hit into it, and it exploded, or was exploded by some species that was in the planet. Maybe they had an ultimate war, and they found a weapon they shouldn't have used, and they exploded the planet. Either way, it's disintegrated. So they brought these ships there to try to mine that gold, and all of them were destroyed because it's just too chaotic there. So then what happened was they went to Earth, and what happened was that the king at the time was ostracized for what happened, and so one of his servants challenged him to a wrestling match. And this is one of the ways to overthrow the king. Like a little clause in there.
So the king is from Nibiru. His name is Alalu. He has a fight with Anu, who
takes over his kingship.
He usurps him, and Alalu takes his ship, gets out of Dodge, so to speak, and
ends up on Earth.
Navigates towards Earth and decides, because their planet was going through a problem with the ozone layer, and they wanted to use gold as a shield to shield that planet. So Alalu kind of saved the day. He comes to Earth, and 450,000 years ago, and discovers that there is gold in the waters of Mesopotamia, in those seas there. Radios back his planet. Next thing you know, they send down 50 astronauts down here, which happened to be the Anunnaki's first expedition onto Earth to mine for gold. Am I correct in that?
Exactly.